Only one of them still stands today. But long ago, there were 7 monuments so legendary, ancient travelers believed you hadn't lived until you saw them with your own eyes. Carved by kings, shaped by ambition, and sometimes lost in mystery, the 7 wonders of the ancient world weren't just marvels of stone and engineering, they were messages. Messages from civilizations that wanted to be remembered forever. But what happened to them? Some were erased by fire, others buried by earthquakes. One may have never existed at all. And each one holds secrets that history still struggles to explain. This is the true story of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, in just 10 minutes. Ready to see what time tried to erase? The Great Pyramid of Giza, the last wonder standing. Standing tall in the blistering Egyptian sun, the Great Pyramid of Giza is more than just ancient, it's immortal. Built over 4,500 years ago for Pharaoh Khufu, it's the only one of the original 7 wonders still intact. But its survival isn't the only thing that makes it extraordinary. For centuries, people believed it was built by slaves. But that myth? Archaeologists have uncovered nearby workers' villages that tell a different story. Laborers were well-fed, given decent shelter, and worked in rotations. Many were skilled craftsmen or farmers whose fields were flooded by the Nile, giving them months off to work on the pyramid. It wasn't slavery, it was national pride. Now here's what really blows minds. Over 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing more than 50 tons, were hauled into place with basic tools, wooden sleds, and pure manpower. Engineers today still argue about how they pulled it off with such precise alignment. Some even suggest lost technologies or forgotten techniques we haven't figured. But yet, the Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb. It was a symbol of eternal power, cosmic order, and a pharaoh's desperate grasp at immortality. But while this giant still watches over the desert, another wonder may have never existed at the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a lush mirage? A staircase of greenery rising above the desert, water flowing through the air, trees and flowers from distant lands blooming in the heat. That's how the ancients described the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, supposedly built by King Nebuchadnezzar II for his queen, who missed the mountains of her homeland. But here's the strange part. No trace of them has ever been found. No ruins. No inscriptions. Some believe the gardens were actually in Nineveh, not Babylon. Others think they were pure fiction, a story invented by Greek writers to wow their audiences. Whether real or imagined, the idea stuck. A man-made paradise, lost in time, or maybe never real to begin with. But the next wonder? That one definitely existed, and it was built to honor the king of the gods himself. The statue of Zeus at Olympia, fallen god of gold and ivory. In the heart of ancient Greece, inside a grand temple at Olympia, sat a god. The statue of Zeus wasn't just massive, it was overwhelming. 12 meters tall, made of ivory and gold, seated on a throne carved with mythical beasts. In one hand, the god of gods held Nike, the spirit of victory. In the other, a scepter topped with an eagle. Crafted by the legendary sculptor Phidias in the 5th century BCE, this statue wasn't just art. It was power made visible. It reminded every visitor that Zeus ruled not just the heavens, but the hearts of an entire civilization. But as Christianity spread across the empire, old gods fell out of favor. Pagan temples were shut down. And the statue? It vanished, maybe burned in a fire, maybe destroyed on purpose. No one knows for sure. All that's left are written descriptions and a few faded images on coins. But Zeus wasn't the only ancient god to lose his home. Another temple, even bigger, would rise, burn, and rise again. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the temple that refused to die. It was massive, marble columns stretching skyward, a sanctuary to Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wild nature, and fertility. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus wasn't just a place of worship. It was a statement. This city mattered. Built in the 6th century BCE, it was once the largest temple in the world. But its legacy? Built on destruction. The first version was wiped out by a flood. The second? Burned down by a man named Herostratus, who set it on fire just to make history remember his name. Alexander the Great offered to rebuild it, and the people let him. That version stood for centuries until, like so many pagan sites, it was eventually shut down by early Christians. Over time, it crumbled piece by piece. Today, only a single column stands where one of history's greatest temples once rose. But while this wonder honored a goddess, the next one was built for a man, to make sure the world never forgot his name. Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, a tomb fit for a king. Built around 350 BC in modern-day Turkey, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus wasn't just a tomb, it was a monument to power. Commissioned by Artemisia for her late husband and brother, Mausolus, the structure soared 45 meters high, covered in marble sculptures and crowned with a chariot statue. Blended temple, pyramid, and palace into one epic memorial. Earthquakes eventually shattered it, and crusaders later used the ruins to build a fortress. But one thing survived: its name. Today, every grand tomb is called a mausoleum, all because of this forgotten king. But the next wonder didn't honor the dead. It celebrated a hard-won victory in bronze and fire. The Colossus of Rhodes, the giant that didn't last. It stood 30 meters tall, a bronze titan overlooking the harbor of Rhodes. Built in 280 BC, the Colossus honored the city's victory over a massive siege. It wasn't just a statue. It was a message: we will not fall. Forged from melted-down weapons left by defeated invaders, the Colossus was dedicated to Helios, the sun god. Some legends claim it straddled the harbor entrance, but most historians now believe it stood beside it. Either way, its reign was short. Just 56 years after it was completed, a violent earthquake brought it crashing down. The pieces lay untouched for centuries, until they were eventually sold off for scrap, never to be seen again. It was the shortest-lived of all the wonders, but its image lived on in art, stories, and the name Colossal. But while this giant watched the seas, the final wonder guided them: a lighthouse so bright, it lit up the edge of the known world. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, light at the edge of the world. Rising over 100 meters above the waves, the Lighthouse of Alexandria wasn't just a beacon. It was a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Commissioned by Ptolemy I after the death of Alexander the Great, it stood on Pharos Island, guiding ships safely into the booming port city of Alexandria. Flames burned at its peak by night, mirrors reflected sunlight by day, and it could reportedly be seen from over 50 kilometers away. At the top, a towering statue, possibly Zeus or Poseidon, watched over the Mediterranean like a guardian of the sea. For centuries, it stood strong. But nature had other plans. A series of devastating earthquakes between the 10th and 14th centuries reduced it to rubble. By the 1400s, it was gone. Some of its stones were later used to build a fortress, but most of it disappeared beneath the waves. In the 1990s, divers discovered pieces of the lighthouse underwater, resting where it once ruled the shoreline. And just like that, the last wonder fell. But even in ruins, the legacy of these wonders refuses to disappear. One by one, they vanished, toppled by fire, buried by quakes, erased by time. Of the 7 ancient wonders, only the Great Pyramid still stands. The rest survive as fragments, sketches, and whispered legends. But here's the truth: these weren't just buildings. They were bold declarations of power, beauty, ambition, and belief. Each one was a civilization's way of saying, "We were here." It mattered. Even in ruin, they still speak. They challenge us to imagine what was lost and what we might still uncover. So now ask yourself, if 6 out of 7 could disappear, what other wonders of the ancient world might still be waiting to be found? Which one would you bring back?